So, as a young, impressionable man, and as you said, seduced by women, power, money, all these things, did you know what do you think a part of the recruitment process was the fact that you maybe really didn't even understand what you were getting involved in?
Claudine went overboard to explain to me because she didn't want me dropping out. They'd had several people before me that hadn't been successful, and they dropped out, and that created problems for them. So she was very clear. But like any young man, I think, at that point in my life, I was pretty arrogant. I'd been trained as an economist, a macroeconomist. So I, in fact, actually believed in the system. And as she explained the system, what my job would be to identify third world countries with resources our corporations covet, like oil.
Right.
And then to arrange for huge loans to that country from the World Bank or one of its sisters. But the money wouldn't actually go to the country. Instead, it would go to our own corporations like Halliburton and Bechtel and Brown and Root to build big infrastructure projects in that country, power plants, industrial parks, things that would benefit a few very wealthy families,
right,
as well as our corporations, but wouldn't help the majority of the people who are too poor to buy electricity or didn't have the skills to get jobs in industrial parks. But at some point, we economic hitmen would go back to the country and we'd say, listen, you borrowed all this money, you can't pay your debts,
right,
and so give us a pound of flesh, sell your oil or whatever resource real cheap to our companies. Vote with us on the next critical United Nations vote. Send troops in support of ours to someplace in the world, like in those days Vietnam or now Iraq or Afghanistan. And as Claudine was explaining all that to me, that we with these huge loans, I'm also understanding, and she's showing me all the statistics that show that when a country gets big, massive loans like this in infrastructure projects, its economy increases. And that tends to happen.
Yeah.
And that's how I've been trained. But what it doesn't show, and what I began to learn over time, and especially with my background in the Peace Corps, I could get this, was that only a few people at the top really benefit. Yes, there's economic growth, but in most of these countries, the majority of the people don't really participate in that. They're not part of that economy, and in fact, they're getting poorer and poorer, and the gap between rich and poor is increasing. And
right.
So it's not accomplishing what the World Bank says, which is to get rid of poverty. But it took me a while to really figure that out.
Well, and I think that's one thing you constantly refer to. This money was handed out, as you said, whether it was a suitcase sometimes to the family, and money was handed out from the IMF, the World Bank, these different organizations to these people that held the power in these countries. And basically in the form of a, it's no different than the way the mob operates. Hey, we'll loan you this money. We'll give you this money for, as you said, for your backside in the future. And their thinking is, well, hey, it can't be that bad. I mean, I've got nothing now, so I'll take it today. And so you understand why they take it. And again, they're seduced by the power, the glory, as being born into power in some of these instances in these countries. But again, ultimately, I think as the lender knows, the World Bank knows that every time that they're going to fail on keeping up with the payment streams. Isn't that correct?
That's correct, Matt, and it's even more insidious than that, because when we economic hitmen fail, which doesn't happen too often, but I do describe in my books how I failed with Jaime Roldos, the president of Ecuador, and with Omar Torrijos of Panama. I was not able to corrupt them. They wouldn't go along with this. They didn't want to screw their countries.
Right.
And they were both assassinated. And in fact, when economic hitmen failed, there are these what we call the jackals in the background, and they either overthrow governments or they assassinate their leaders.
Right.
And the leaders know this. And so basically we go in and we say, hey, listen, you can either sign off on this loan and you will get a good share. We bribe people. We legally bribed people, and I can go into that in more detail if you want in a minute.
I would love
but
it, yeah.
these were legal bribes. So we offer them this very attractive legal bribe, or they also know that lurking in the background are the jackals. And they remember what happened to Allende of Chile and Arbenz of Guatemala, Mossadegh of Iran, and Lumumba of the Congo, and Roldos and Torrijos, and so many others. I mean, this is standard practice, and it's actually become, the United States has admitted to many of these at this point.
Sure.
And the third thing is that if the jackals fail, which doesn't happen often, but as we failed with Saddam Hussein, both the economic hitmen and the jackals, then the last resort is to send in the military.
Right.
And all of these people know that all of that is there. So, what would you do, Matt? Here, I give you a chance to take this big loan that you can show to your country is going to increase its infrastructure, and you're going to get a piece of the action,
right.
Or you can face the jackals.
Well,
it's pretty
again, I think being put into that position and your family is somewhat threatened, and you have the power, and you're basically forced. You're forced to take. There is no way out of this type of situation. Again, I think all of us, if put into that situation, born into an environment where, our economy is rich with resources, but yet we have no way to get to them because we're poor. And a country comes in and says, hey, here's some money. I'm going to make you a palace. I'm going to give you all this strength.